The Pitchsider. Pitchside for every game.
Hello and welcome back to the Pitchsider podcast. Sorry it's been a while, but we've taken a break over Christmas and I also went on holiday for a couple of weeks. So we are starting fresh from this new year in 2023. So I hope you all had a really good Christmas and a happy new year. And I hope this year will be as exciting as we hope the things to come on the Pitchsider will be. There's a lot to come, and I'll get onto that later on in this podcast. This podcast will be a bit short. There will be a main episode as normal on Monday at 8. This is to sort of give you a update of what's going on around the Pitchsider and what our thoughts are on the World Cup and sort of general football over the last couple of months. So let's get on. I hope you've all had a great time off and are ready to get back to football. So mainly why we were off, we had the World Cup. I know this was probably a long time ago and a lot of people probably feel like this was a long time and looking forward to either the Euros or the next World Cup. But we're going to give our quick thoughts on what we think happened. And yeah, I mean, this, if you were under a rock or anything, you would have not known, but Messi has won his first World Cup with Argentina after beating Argentina 4-2 on penalties. I was actually in America for this, which is a bit of a different experience than watching it over from the UK. But yeah, it was good. I mean, the whole World Cup as a whole had a bit of like controversy and everything after everything that's happened with all of the certain rights and that. But if we get down to the actual football, whole football was really fantastic. And yeah, I really enjoyed the whole World Cup. It was a good World Cup. There was a lot of shocks. It had everything, big wins. I mean, big clubs going out early, a shock. Obviously, England didn't win it. All English fans like to think it's coming home. But yeah, it's nice to see Messi go and win his first World Cup. And I mean, shout out to Martinez, the Aston Villa goalkeeper. He was absolutely amazing within this World Cup. So yeah, it was quite a well done World Cup. If you ignore what happened on the outside, I think it was quite a good World Cup. I don't think it would go down as sort of the best final in history, but it was very good. A lot of goals. So yeah, I mean, maybe watching the first game when Argentina got beat by Saudi Arabia, you wouldn't have seen that. But I think most of our predictions from the Pitchsider were correct. Obviously, we didn't pick the winner. We thought Brazil would. It was definitely enjoyed it a lot more. I mean, shout out to Monaco getting to the semi-finals, losing to France, but it's the furthest any African or tied joint to any African team getting to the semi-finals. So they had a whole successful run. Obviously, Croatia doing well again. From England's point of view, it was a bit disappointing. It was a bit of bad refereeing maybe, but I mean it all came down to Harry Kane and missing that penalty. As a sort of an England fan, it was maybe a bit disappointing after getting to the final of the Euros and coming third last time in the World Cup. To go out in the quarterfinals was not as we predicted, but it is what it is, and we move on. There was questions over Southgate, but I mean the whole team played well. It was obviously we came up against France in the quarterfinals, so it was a bit sort of a disappointment to sort of meet them that early on. You'd want to meet them further on in the competition, but you have to play hard teams in a World Cup. Every team is good. Every team has a chance to sort of go and win this, and we saw this with Saudi Arabia beating Argentina in the first round of fixtures. So it's kind of something that we definitely enjoyed. The whole nation got behind England, and everyone was happy to watch it. Everything stopped. The whole world came together for a great show, and overall, I think it was a very good World Cup, especially for Argentina. But overall, everything went well, and there was obviously few refereeing decisions that people criticised, and this extra time. But the extra time rule was actually good. It allowed more football to be played. A bit shocking to see sometimes 15 minutes added on at the end of a half, but it is what it is, and definitely enjoyed it. Let's move on to some of the football that's happened. Any football this week we will sort of we will talk about in the podcast that will come out on Monday. But we've had a round of different teams. Just quickly go over. I mean, certain teams are doing well. Arsenal, they now have a 5-point gap at the top, with City in third. And then, Newcastle are flying high, with joint on points with Manchester United. But teams like Liverpool and Chelsea are sitting 10th currently in the league, after their loss to City, but we'll get onto that later. And Liverpool are sitting 6th. There's still a lot of games to be played. A lot of teams have games in hand on everyone. But the league is very tight. I mean, there's only 10 points between Chelsea and United. So it could go down to the wire, and any team could get the top 4. But Newcastle are doing really well. And it's going very well. Down the bottom of the table in the Premier League, Southampton are having a real rough time of it. They are 12th. They have 12 points after 18 games, 2 points below Wolves, and Everton are also down in the relegation battle. But there's a couple of teams like West Ham. You would have thought maybe would have been higher up, but they are going to be in a battle, and whether David Moyes will sort of continue, it will continue as the West Ham manager. By the end of the season, he would need a big turnaround. But one of the big talking points is Frank Lampard. He is not having a very good time, and he is currently the favourite manager to be sacked. But we'll get more onto that in this weekend's podcast. Looking around Europe, Barcelona and Real Madrid are joint in La Liga. In the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich have a 4-point lead over Freiburg. Union Berlin have sort of dropped off after being top at the very start. Napoli continue their top run in Italy with AC Milan 36, Juventus and Inter Milan are both all in the Champions League spots. In France, PSG obviously are top, which is not a shock for most people. But we are now into the month of January, and with January comes transfers, and there has been some big transfers already in this cup. Chelsea have signed defender Badashi, I probably said that wrong, from Monaco for 35 million. They've also signed a forward from a Norwegian side called David Fofana. If you follow Chelsea, you would have seen that both of these players were at last night's game from Man City for 12 million. Liverpool have been early with the signing of Gecko from PSV. Man United were in for him in the summer, but after a fantastic World Cup, he's now signed for Liverpool and will be a great addition to their team, and it'll be exciting to see him play after they've got a couple of injuries, so maybe his arrival can turn their form around. Dali Blind has signed for free to Bayern Munich on a 6-month contract, which has the extension to be signed for a year. Yeah, and there's been a number of sort of transfers and sort of a lot of gossip running around, especially over the signing of a couple of players. So there's a lot of people who are chasing Jude Bellingham. He's one of the highly rated midfielders from England's World Cup, but also he is likely to leave Borussia Dortmund in the summer, and there's a number of clubs after him: Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, and Real Madrid, who are increasingly optimistic of their chances, and they believe that they can tempt him away from England and make him sign for Spain. He'll be a great signing for any club. One of the other signings, which has had a lot of talking points, is Enzo Fernandez, one of the real World Cup stars from Argentina who plays football for Benfica. He has a €120 million release clause, and many teams are after his signature, but only one can do it. Chelsea were seen as favourites, but there's been a couple of bids rejected, and Chelsea can't pay their full can't pay the full release clause, which has to be paid in full if it is triggered. They can't trigger this because of financial fair play. They have to do it over instalments, and there was I think this deal has now fallen through, so it's likely Enzo will probably remain at Benfica until a later date. But the other star between Chelsea and Arsenal is over the Ukrainian midfielder and winger. Mudryk. Arsenal have had 2 bids rejected in the ranges of 50 to 60 million. And Chelsea did invite some of his representation to the Chelsea game to try and sway him to Chelsea. But it seems his desire is to go to Arsenal. I reckon he probably will end up at Arsenal. But we will keep you updated on the Pitchsider. So that was a quick roundup of what's sort of happening. We'll go more in depth over on the next podcast, which will be released on Monday. But yeah, the Pitchsider is back. We are hoping that this year will be bigger and better than ever before. We've got a lot of more exciting features to come, and definitely we would like you to sort of subscribe, check out the Pitchsider. And yeah, it's going to be a exciting time for fans. And yeah, I mean, you can check us out on our Instagram page. Just to let you know, coming up, it will be likely 2 episodes of the Pitchsider podcast per week. It won't be guaranteed that it'll be 2, but there will always definitely be one, our main show on a Monday. But midweek, we are in the development of sort of planning a new podcast. It will be sort of a non-league. We'll focus on like non-league football, and maybe women's football a bit more. This is sort of a podcast where we are anything. It could be on anything. It would definitely be focusing more on non-league, but we as a football fan myself, I don't know too much about non-league. I do go and watch it. If you've seen our sort of Instagram page, you'll see that we sort of attend a couple of non-league fixtures every season, and yeah, we definitely would like to get more into that. But we, as a Pitchsider, the Pitchsider brand has always been about promoting those stories that don't always get in the headlines in mainstream football, and non-league is one of these ones that can be very exciting, and a lot of people have local clubs and don't go to them, and we would encourage you to go and support them, especially in this sort of, if you like to go see football, it's definitely a cheaper way to go and see football quality isn't always as great, but it you have to sort of expect these players. These aren't professional players, but it is very exciting. You get to see some of the sort of younger players that could come into sort of like the League Two and League One teams, or you can see some of the older players that are on their sort of on their downward trajectory. And yeah, it's definitely something that the pitch side would like to get into more on. And it will be like a journey. So as I learn about the sort of ins and outs of the non-league system and how it works and what players there are, what teams, we will be bringing you along on that journey. So it'll be a bit more of like an educational podcast. So if you want to get into football, definitely check it out, or you want to know more about football, different sort of tactics and like the offside rule, or just how the English system works, or even we will be checking out other sort of non-leagues in sort of different countries as well. So yeah, it's definitely going to be sort of a more fun podcast. It won't be all about the Premier League and that, and it's definitely sort of more of a direction where you may learn something. Even the most experienced football experts can always learn something. So definitely check us out. There'll still be gossip and there's still other stuff coming this year, so please keep an eye out. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram, or go to our website, thepitchsider.com, and I will see you on Monday. Hope you have a good weekend and enjoy the FA Cup. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
For all the latest news, transfers, and football articles, check out thepitchsider.com. It's the place to be. Contact us on our socials. Instagram and Twitter is @thepitchsider, or via email is thepitchsider@hotmail.com.